Locked up until she tells us what happened.
I just want to say how...
We're talking about...
The truth is that I'm very sorry. I am for... I want an answer just as bad
17 kids and one
as all of you.
In a lot of really weird ways in this story.
classroom. I want to
Those kids.
know what happened in that classroom.
This is a true story.
Why just her classroom? Why only hers?
Children.
I love...
Walked out of those homes, no one pulled them out.
That happened right here in my town.
Forced them. What do you see that I don't?
Story. But you're not gonna find it in the... A lot of people die.
No one
Very wrong. Going on.
Tell me, where did you go?
There's something very in my life.
To the investigators.
Seen anything like that.
Come on.
Leave the investigating.
What am I looking at?
I've never seen...
What if one small town mystery could expose secrets so dark they change everything? In today's video on Ms. Movie Explain, we dive deep into Weapons, 2025, breaking down its shocking story, hidden clues, and mind-bending facts you probably missed. From disturbing twists to chilling moments that stay with you long after the credits roll, this film isn't just a movie, it's an experience. Watch till the end to uncover the real meaning behind Weapons and why this thriller is already being called one of the most unsettling films of the year. Weapons is a 2025 American mystery horror film directed, written, produced, and co-scored by Zach Greger. The movie features a large cast including Josh Brolin, Julia Garner, Alden Ehrenreich, Austin Abrams, Carrie Christopher, Toby Huss, Benedict Wong, and Amy Madigan. The story follows a strange and frightening case where 17 children from the same classroom suddenly run away on the same night at the exact same time. After the big critical and commercial success of his film Barbarian, 2022, Zach Greger started writing the script for Weapons. Many film studios competed to buy the script, and New Line Cinema eventually won the rights to make the movie. In 2023, Hollywood labor strikes caused problems with casting. Filming was first planned from May to July 2023. But several actors left the project because of schedule conflicts. Casting started again in February 2024 and finished in May of the same year. After that, filming began in Atlanta and was completed in July. Weapons was released in movie theaters across the United States on August 8, 2025. By Warner Brothers Pictures. The film received very positive reviews from critics and became a box office hit, earning $269 million worldwide on a budget of $38 million. Amy Madigan received nominations for both the Academy Award and the Golden Globe Award, and she won the Critics' Choice Award for Best Supporting Actress. The film is told in 6 chapters, and each chapter is shown from the point of view of a different character. A child narrator says that on a Wednesday night 2 years earlier, 17 children from a 3rd grade class in the town of Maybrook, Pennsylvania, suddenly ran out of their homes at 2:17 a.m. and vanished. Only one child, Alex Lilly, did not leave. Their teacher, Justine Gandy, is put on leave because people suspect she may be connected to the children's disappearance. Archer Griff, the father of Matthew, one of the missing children, becomes especially suspicious of her. Justine starts drinking again and has a one-night relationship with her married ex-boyfriend, police officer Paul Morgan. Worried about Alex's safety, Justine secretly follows him to his home and finds that the windows are covered with newspaper and his parents are sitting inside without moving. She waits outside Alex's house in her car, but falls asleep late at night. While she is sleeping, Alex's mother walks out of the house in a trance, gets into Justine's car, and cuts off a lock of Justine's hair. Archer becomes angry with the police for not making progress and begins investigating on his own. While watching smart doorbell camera footage of Matthew and another child, he notices that both children ran in paths that met at the same unknown place. Both Justine and Archer begin having nightmares about the missing children and a strange old woman, Paul. While on duty, Paul stops a homeless drug addict named James from breaking into a house. As Paul searches James, he is poked by one of James's needles, which makes Paul lose control and knock him unconscious. When Paul realizes that the camera in his police car recorded what happened, he lets James go because he is afraid of getting in trouble. James breaks into Alex's house and accidentally finds the missing children locked in the basement. He goes to the police station to report what he found and to collect the $50,000 reward, but Paul sees him and chases him. While running through the woods, James sees the strange old woman. When Paul catches him, James says he knows where the missing children are. They go to Alex's house together, and Paul goes inside to check, leaving James handcuffed in the car. Hours later, Paul comes back out in a wild state and drags James inside the house. Marcus. After Justine begs school principal Marcus Miller to check on Alex, the strange old woman comes to the school and introduces herself as Alex's aunt, Gladys. She says she is helping take care of Alex's family because his parents have become sick. When Marcus insists on visiting Alex's home the next day, Gladys suddenly appears at Marcus's house that night. She cuts a lock of hair from Marcus's husband, Terry, and performs a dark spell on Marcus, forcing him to kill Terry. Gladys then orders Marcus to kill Justine. Marcus finds Justine at a gas station where she is arguing with Archer and attacks her. Archer protects Justine, who escapes in her car. Marcus chases her into traffic and is hit by a vehicle, dying on the road. Later, Archer makes peace with Justine and shows her what he discovered. Justine realizes that the children were running toward Alex's house. A flashback shows that Alex's mother invited Gladys, a distant relative, to stay with them because Gladys was homeless and Alex's mother was suffering from a disease that could not be cured. One day, Alex comes home and realizes that Gladys has put his parents under a spell, threatening that they will kill themselves if Alex tells anyone about her. Wanting more victims, Gladys orders Alex to take a personal item from each of his classmates and promises that she will leave afterward. After Alex brings her the items, Gladys uses magic to control the children and calls them to the basement, where she feeds on their life energy. In the present, when Gladys knows she has been discovered, she tells Alex they must leave. Archer and Justine enter Alex's house and are attacked by Paul and James, who are under Gladys's control. Justine manages to take Paul's gun and kills both of them. Archer goes into the basement to look for Matthew but is put under Gladys's spell and turns on Justine. Alex avoids his controlled parents and uses Gladys's own spell against her. The children chase Gladys as she runs through the neighborhood, catch her, and tear her apart. When Gladys dies, everyone she controlled is freed from her spell. Justine finds Alex holding his parents, while Archer carries Matthew back home. The child narrator from the beginning reveals that Alex later moved away to live with another aunt after his parents were sent to a hospital. The children returned to their homes, and some of them have even started speaking again. The casting process for Weapons, 2025. Directed by Zach Kreger, was a labyrinthine journey marked by delays, recasts, and a relentless pursuit of performers who could embody the film's intricate blend of horror, mystery, and dark humor. Kreger, known for his breakout hit Barbarian, 2022, approached casting with a vision that emphasized authenticity, emotional depth, and the ability to navigate the script's non-linear structure and tonal shifts. In interviews, Kreger has emphasized that the film's ensemble nature required actors capable of carrying individual chapters while contributing to the overarching narrative of a community's unraveling after the mysterious disappearance of 17 children from a single classroom at exactly 2:17 a.m. The production faced significant hurdles, including a shutdown in 2023 due to the SAG-AFTRA strike, which led to a complete overhaul of the cast except for one key player. This reshuffling ultimately shaped the film into a star-studded affair that critics have praised for its performances, contributing to its box office success of over $269 million worldwide and its nomination for an Oscar in the newly introduced Achievement in Casting category. Originally, Weapons was set to feature a different lineup, with actors like Pedro Pascal attached in leading roles. However, scheduling conflicts and the strike prompted a re-evaluation. Cregger revealed in an Entertainment Weekly interview that Austin Abrams was the only original cast member to remain, highlighting the director's flexibility and commitment to finding the perfect fit. This pivot allowed Cregger to assemble a dream team, drawing from a mix of established stars and rising talents. The casting director, working closely with Cregger, focused on chemistry reads and improvisation sessions to ensure the actors could handle the film's demanding emotional range from quiet dread to explosive confrontations. Cregger has spoken about drawing inspiration from ensemble-driven films like Magnolia and Prisoners, aiming for a cast that could interweave personal stories into a larger tapestry of suburban nightmare. The result is a roster that not only elevates the horror elements but also infuses the mystery with relatable human frailty. Julia Garner leads the ensemble as Justine Gandy, the beleaguered elementary school teacher at the center of the disappearance. Garner's casting was a coup for Cregger, who admired her transformative work in series like Ozark and films such as The Assistant. In Weapons, Justine is portrayed as a woman grappling with guilt, suspicion, and her own unraveling sanity, a role that required Garner to convey vulnerability amid escalating chaos. Cregger praised Garner's ability to disappear into the character, noting in a behind-the-scenes feature that her audition involved an improvised scene where she reacted to imaginary accusations from parents, capturing the film's theme of mistrust. Garner's background in method acting, honed through her Emmy-winning portrayal of Ruth Langmore in Ozark, allowed her to bring a raw intensity to Justine's arc. She prepared by shadowing real teachers and researching cases of missing children, adding layers to her performance that resonate with the film's exploration of communal paranoia. Critics have hailed her as the emotional anchor, with her scenes of quiet desperation contrasting the more bombastic horror elements. Garner's involvement also marked her second horror outing of 2025, following Wolfman, showcasing her versatility in the genre. Her chemistry with co-stars, particularly in interlaced chapters, underscores why Cregger fought to secure her after the initial cast shakeup. Josh Brolin, cast as Archer Griff, the grief-stricken father of one of the missing children, brings a commanding presence that elevates the film's tension. Brolin, an Oscar nominee for Milk and a staple in Marvel's Avengers saga as Thanos, was drawn to the role for its emotional complexity. Archer is both a sympathetic victim and a volatile force in the community. Cregger described Brolin's audition as electrifying, where he channeled raw anger in a monologue about parental loss, drawing from his own experiences as a father. Beyond acting, Brolin served as an executive producer, influencing casting decisions by advocating for actors who could match his intensity. His preparation involved physical training to embody Archer's construction worker background, and he improvised several key confrontations, adding authenticity to the character's descent into obsession. Reviews have noted Brolin's performance as a standout, blending menace with heartbreak, much like his role in No Country for Old Men. The actor has spoken about the role's cathartic nature, allowing him to explore themes of helplessness in a horror context. Brolin's dual role as producer and star exemplifies the collaborative spirit Cregger fostered, ensuring the cast felt invested in the project's success. Alden Ehrenreich portrays Paul, a local cop entangled in the mystery through his personal connection to Justine. Ehrenreich, best known for playing young Han Solo in Solo, a Star Wars story, and starring in Oppenheimer, was cast for his ability to convey quiet introspection amid escalating dread. Cregger highlighted Ehrenreich's chemistry with Garner during readings, noting that their dynamic added a layer of romantic tension to the horror narrative. Ehrenreich prepared by consulting with real police officers in small towns, focusing on the psychological toll of unsolved cases. His performance balances vulnerability and authority, making Paul a relatable entry point for audiences navigating the film's twists. Critics appreciate how Enrique's subtle acting contrasts the more overt horror, drawing comparisons to his work in Hail, Caesar, where he showcased comedic timing that aligns with Weapon's dark humor elements. The actor has discussed the challenge of filming non-linear scenes, requiring him to track Paul's emotional progression across chapters. Austin Abrams, the sole survivor from the original cast, plays James, a troubled young man seeking a fix whose path intersects with the central mystery. Abrams, recognized from Euphoria and The Walking Dead, World Beyond, impressed Kreger with his raw energy and commitment, which carried over despite the production delays. His role involves intense physical and emotional demands, including scenes of desperation that highlight the film's body horror aspects. Abrams prepared by immersing himself in research on addiction, adding depth to James's motivations. Kreger praised Abrams for his adaptability, noting that his performance grounded the film's more supernatural elements in human reality. Reviews commend Abrams for stealing scenes with his nuanced portrayal, blending pathos and unpredictability. Benedict Wong embodies Marcus, the school principal caught in the aftermath. Wong, a veteran of Doctor Strange and Three-Body Problem, was cast for his commanding yet empathetic presence, essential for a character navigating institutional blame. Kreger admired Wong's ability to convey quiet authority, drawing from his role in Annihilation. Wong's preparation included studying school administrators during crises, infusing Marcus with a sense of burdened responsibility. His interactions with the ensemble, particularly Brolin, heighten the film's tension, showcasing Wong's versatility in horror. Amy Madigan's casting as Gladys Lilly, the enigmatic grandmother figure, has been lauded as inspired. Madigan, an Oscar nominee for Twice in a Lifetime, brings gravitas to a role that unfolds into the film's emotional core. Kreger recounted her refusal to use a stunt double for a climactic scene, insisting on performing it herself to maintain authenticity. Her performance, blending warmth with underlying menace, has sparked Oscar buzz for Best Supporting Actress. Madigan drew from personal experiences of family secrets, adding layers to Gladys's revelations. Carrie Christopher plays Alex Lilly, the sole child who doesn't disappear, a pivotal role requiring innocence amid horror. As a young actor from Days of Our Lives, Christopher was chosen for his natural expressiveness. Kreger worked closely with him, using child-friendly techniques to elicit performances without trauma. His scenes with Madigan highlight generational dynamics, earning praise for authenticity. Toby Huss as Captain Ed, the beleaguered police chief, adds comedic relief with his exasperated demeanor. Huss, known from *Halt and Catch Fire*, was cast for his timing, balancing the film's dark tones. June Diane Raphael as Donna provides maternal warmth, her background in comedy like Grace and Frankie fitting the script's humor. Supporting players like Whitmer Thomas as Alex's dad and Kai Shutterer as Alex's mom enrich the suburban setting. Cameos from Sarah Paxton and Justin Long add meta-horror nods, with Long's involvement stemming from his Barbarian connection. The crew's influence on casting cannot be overstated. Producers Roy Lee and Mary Yoon, with horror pedigrees from It and The Nun, helped attract talent. Cinematographer Larkin Saple's visual style informed choices for actors who could thrive in long takes. Overall, the casting reflects Kreger's vision of a film where performances drive the mystery, resulting in a cohesive ensemble that propels Weapons to horror excellence. Weapons, 2025 movie, a comprehensive analysis. Production, development and pre-production. The genesis of Weapons emerged from a period of creative triumph and personal tragedy for filmmaker Zach Kreger. Following the remarkable financial and critical success of his horror film Barbarian in 2022, Kreger embarked on developing a new spec script that would push the boundaries of the genre even further. This project, which would become Weapons, represented a significant departure from his previous work while maintaining the innovative storytelling approach that had established him as a fresh voice in contemporary horror cinema. The conceptual framework for Weapons drew inspiration from several seminal works across different mediums. Cregger cited Paul Thomas Anderson's ensemble masterpiece Magnolia from 1999 as a primary influence, particularly its intricate narrative structure that weaves multiple storylines together into a cohesive whole. The influence of Denis Villeneuve's 2013 thriller Prisoners was equally significant, especially in its exploration of parental desperation and the moral compromises people make when their children are endangered. Additionally, Jennifer Egan's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel A Visit from the Goon Squad provided structural inspiration with its innovative approach to interconnected narratives spanning different time periods and perspectives. The screenplay for Weapons was deeply personal for Cregger, shaped by profound grief following the death of his close friend and creative collaborator Trevor Moore, a fellow member of the comedy troupe The Whitest Kids You Know. This loss infused the script with emotional depth and authenticity, transforming what could have been a straightforward horror premise into something more nuanced and psychologically complex. As a tribute to his late friend, Cregger incorporated a reference to a sketch Moore had written for The Whitest Kids You Know into the finished screenplay, ensuring that Moore's creative spirit lived on in the film. Cregger described Weapons as a horror epic that represented a more personal story than his previous work. Unlike Barbarian, which focused on building tension through architectural spaces and hidden secrets, Weapons aimed to explore the fractures within a community when faced with inexplicable tragedy. The screenplay examined how people seek explanations and assign blame when confronted with events that defy rational understanding, creating a narrative that was as much about human psychology as supernatural horror. The script entered the Hollywood market on January 22, 2023. Immediately sparking intense interest among major studios and streaming platforms. Netflix, New Line Cinema, TriStar Pictures, and Universal Pictures all expressed strong interest in acquiring the project, setting the stage for what would become one of the most competitive bidding wars of that year. The screenplay's unique blend of horror, mystery, and ensemble drama, combined with Cregger's proven track record with Barbarian, made it an extremely attractive property. According to Cregger's later accounts, the deal came together with remarkable speed. Within 90 minutes of electronically distributing the script to studios at 8:00 a.m., Michael DeLuca, the CEO of Warner Bros. Pictures, contacted him to close the deal. This rapid response demonstrated the exceptional quality of the screenplay and the studio's eagerness to work with Cregger on his follow-up to Barbarian. New Line Cinema, operating under the Warner Bros. Umbrella, ultimately secured the rights within 24 hours of receiving the script. The deal was unprecedented in its generosity and the creative freedom it afforded Cregger. Warner Bros. Offered $38 million to cover all production costs, including the budget for filming and salaries for cast and crew. Cregger himself received $10 million up front for his roles as writer, director, and producer, reflecting the studio's confidence in his vision and abilities. Perhaps most significantly for Cregger as an artist, the deal included final cut privilege, pending positive reactions from test screenings. This level of creative control is rarely granted to filmmakers, especially those relatively early in their directorial careers, and demonstrated Warner Bros.' commitment to allowing Cregger to fully realize his artistic vision. The deal also guaranteed a theatrical release, ensuring that Weapons would receive a proper cinema debut rather than being relegated to streaming platforms. Universal Pictures had also been in serious contention for the project, offering $7 million less than Warner Bros.' winning bid. The difference proved decisive, though Universal's involvement with Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions added an interesting wrinkle to the bidding process. Monkey Paw had participated in the bidding war in conjunction with Universal, recognizing the quality of Cregger's screenplay. The aftermath of losing this bidding war had significant industry ramifications, as Jordan Peele subsequently dismissed his longtime managers Joel Zadak and Peter Principato. Principato's dismissal was particularly noteworthy as he also served as Cregger's manager, highlighting the high stakes and complex relationships involved in major Hollywood deal-making. The financial structure of Cregger's deal demonstrated sophisticated negotiation on the part of his representation. His car-agent, Joe Mann, negotiated the $10 million upfront fee with an innovative arrangement where Cregger deferred $2 million of that sum in exchange for 50 back-end points on the film. This meant that while Cregger would receive less money initially, he would participate much more substantially in the film's profits if it proved successful at the box office. Given Weapon's ultimate financial performance, grossing over $268 million worldwide against its $38 million budget, this proved to be an astute financial decision. Following the sale, Cregger made revisions to the script based on discussions with the studio and his own evolving vision for the project. These changes included adding a scene where the character Archer apologizes to his employees at a construction site, providing additional character development and humanizing a figure who might otherwise seem single-mindedly obsessed with finding his missing son. Another revision involved having the character Alex steal name tags for Aunt Gladys, a detail that would prove crucial to the film's supernatural elements and the mechanism by which the villain exercises her malevolent powers. The casting process for Weapons began in spring 2023 and initially assembled an impressive roster of talent. Between May and July 2023, Pedro Pascal, Renate Reinsve, Brian Tyree Henry, Austin Abrams, Tom Burke, and June Diane Raphael were all announced as cast members. This ensemble promised to bring together established stars like Pascal with rising talents and respected character actors, creating the multi-layered cast necessary for the film's complex narrative structure. However, the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes, which saw both the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists going on strike, created significant scheduling conflicts for the production. These industry-wide work stoppages, which lasted from May through November 2023, delayed the start of principal photography and created cascading conflicts with actors' schedules. Pascal, who had become one of Hollywood's most in-demand actors following his roles in The Mandalorian and The Last of Us, found himself unable to accommodate the rescheduled production dates. Similarly, Reinsve, Henry, and Burke all encountered scheduling conflicts that prevented their participation in the film. The recasting process began in earnest in early 2024. In February, Josh Brolin replaced Pedro Pascal in what was reportedly the lead role of Archer Griff, a construction contractor whose son is among the missing children. Brolin brought gravitas and intensity to the role, qualities that proved essential for anchoring the film's emotional core. His experience in ensemble films and his ability to convey paternal desperation made him an ideal choice for the character. April 2024 saw additional major casting announcements. Julia Garner, fresh from her acclaimed performance in Ozark and her breakout role in The Assistant, replaced Renate Reinsve as Justine Gandy, the elementary school teacher who becomes a focal point of community suspicion. Garner's ability to portray vulnerability while maintaining inner strength proved crucial for a character who faces persecution while desperately trying to protect her students and solve the mystery of their disappearance. Alden Ehrenreich, who had gained recognition through films like Hail, Caesar, and Solo, A Star Wars Story, replaced Tom Burke as Paul Morgan, a police officer and Justine's ex-boyfriend. Ehrenreich brought complexity to a character who struggles with his own moral compromises while navigating the investigation and his complicated relationship with the protagonist. In May 2024, the final pieces of the casting puzzle fell into place. Amy Madigan joined the production in what would prove to be a career-defining role as Aunt Gladys, the film's primary antagonist. Carrie Christopher was cast as Alex Lilly, the one child from the classroom who doesn't disappear, making him a crucial figure in unraveling the mystery. Benedict Wong replaced Brian Tyree Henry as Marcus Miller, the sympathetic school principal who becomes tragically entangled in the supernatural events. The casting of Amy Madigan as Gladys proved to be a masterstroke that elevated the entire film. Craig later recalled that he had admired Madigan's performance in Field of Dreams from 1989 and believed she would deliver an exceptional performance. When her name appeared on a list of potential casting choices, he immediately recognized that she was perfect for the role. According to Craig, Madigan saved the film with her portrayal of the enigmatic and terrifying Aunt Gladys. The character of Gladys required an actress who could balance elements of the grotesque with an unsettling humanity, creating a villain who was simultaneously absurd and terrifying. Craig took an interesting approach to the character's backstory, presenting Madigan with two possible interpretations, one where Gladys was a regular person using witchcraft to prevent dying from an incurable condition, and another where she was instead an immortal creature performing an approximate simulacrum of being human. Significantly, Craig never asked Madigan which interpretation she chose, allowing her to develop her own internal understanding of the character that would inform her performance without limiting it to a single definitive explanation. Throughout the pre-production phase, Craig worked closely with his production team to develop the visual language and tonal approach that would distinguish Weapons from other contemporary horror films. The goal was to create a film that would satisfy genre fans' expectations for scares and suspense while also functioning as a sophisticated mystery with serious thematic concerns about community, blame, and the nature of evil. The production design team began scouting locations in the Atlanta area, looking for environments that could convincingly portray the small Pennsylvania town of Maybrook where the story takes place. The locations needed to feel authentically Middle American while also possessing the slightly off-kilter quality that would support the film's increasingly surreal and horrific developments. The team focused on finding practical locations that would allow for extended shooting schedules and complex staging of the film's multiple storylines. The screenplay's structure, which tells its story from multiple perspectives and non-linear chronology, required careful planning in pre-production. Craig worked with his cinematographer and production designer to develop distinct visual approaches for different sections of the film, helping audiences track the various storylines while maintaining narrative cohesion. Color palettes, camera movements, and framing strategies were all calibrated to support the script's ambitious structural approach. Filming principal photography for Weapons commenced in May 2024 in Atlanta, Georgia, a location that has become increasingly popular for film and television production due to generous tax incentives and well-developed production infrastructure. The production took advantage of Atlanta's diverse locations, which could convincingly double for the small-town Pennsylvania setting required by the script. The Maybrook Elementary School, a crucial location where much of the story's mystery originates, was filmed at an actual school facility in Tucker, Georgia, a suburb northeast of Atlanta. Using a real school rather than constructing sets provided authenticity to the scenes while also presenting logistical challenges in terms of scheduling and managing the large number of child actors required for classroom scenes. One of the most remarkable aspects of the production was the extensive involvement of child performers. According to reports from Time Out magazine, the busiest days of filming involved 170 children on set. Managing this many young performers required specialized personnel and careful planning. The production employed child labor coordinators whose primary responsibility was keeping the children engaged and entertained when they weren't actively filming. This was essential not only for legal compliance with child labor laws but also for maintaining the energy and enthusiasm of young performers throughout long shooting days. The child coordinators developed various activities and educational programs to occupy the children during downtime, ensuring they remained fresh and focused when called to perform. This level of organization was critical given that many scenes required precise coordination among multiple child actors, and the production couldn't afford to have young performers become tired or distracted. The gas station sequences, which feature prominently in the film's climactic confrontations, were shot over 3 consecutive days at a BP gas station and convenience store in Covington, Georgia, another Atlanta suburb that has hosted numerous film and television productions. Shooting at a functioning gas station required careful coordination with the business owners and management of both the film crew's needs and the gas station's ongoing commercial operations. The production likely had to schedule filming during off-peak hours to minimize disruption while ensuring adequate lighting and control over the environment. The production design team transformed various Atlanta locations to create the specific aesthetic required for Maybrook, Pennsylvania. This involved careful attention to details like signage, vegetation, architecture, and atmospheric elements that would convince audiences they were watching events unfold in a small northeastern town rather than the suburban south. The art department's work was crucial in maintaining the film's internal consistency across multiple locations shot over several weeks. Cinematography played a vital role in establishing the film's unsettling atmosphere. The director of photography worked to find unusual angles and compositions that would heighten tension even in seemingly mundane scenes. According to critical responses, the film succeeded in finding the eeriest camera angle in damn near every scene, whether it's overtly shocking or insidiously banal, demonstrating how thoughtful visual choices can elevate horror filmmaking beyond simple jump scares. The production wrapped in July 2024, having completed approximately 2 months of principal photography. This relatively brisk shooting schedule was possible due to thorough pre-production planning and Cregger's clear vision for each scene. The efficiency of the shoot also reflected the professionalism of the cast and crew, who worked collaboratively to realize the ambitious script within practical time and budget constraints. Throughout filming, Cregger maintained the collaborative atmosphere that had characterized the pre-production process. He worked closely with his actors to develop their characters and find authentic emotional moments within the heightened reality of the horror mystery narrative. The ensemble cast required careful balancing to ensure each storyline received appropriate attention and that the multiple perspectives served the overall narrative rather than fragmenting it. Josh Brolin's performance as Archer required extensive physical preparation, as the character spends much of the film frantically searching for his missing son. Brolin brought intensity and desperation to scenes where Archer confronts various community members and pursues increasingly desperate leads in his investigation. The actor's commitment to the role was evident in physically demanding sequences, including the film's climactic confrontation. Julia Garner faced the challenge of portraying a character who must maintain composure and determination while facing community suspicion and increasingly bizarre circumstances. Her performance required conveying both vulnerability and resilience, particularly in scenes where Justine faces harassment from parents who blame her for their children's disappearances. Garner's ability to show internal conflict while maintaining external composure proved essential for making the character sympathetic and believable. Amy Madigan's portrayal of Aunt Gladys required a delicate balance between horror and dark comedy. The character needed to be genuinely frightening while also possessing an absurd quality that made her both disturbing and oddly entertaining. Madigan approached the role with total commitment, creating a villain who would prove memorable and generate significant critical acclaim. Her performance incorporated physical transformation, with makeup and costume design contributing to the character's unsettling appearance, while Madigan's choices as an actor provided the personality and menace that made Gladys more than just a visual effect. The production also benefited from strong supporting performances. Benedict Wong brought warmth and humanity to Marcus Miller, the school principal who tries to do the right thing but finds himself tragically manipulated by supernatural forces. Alden Ehrenreich's Paul Morgan required showing a character compromised by his own moral failings while still retaining enough sympathy that audiences could understand his actions. Austin Abrams created a memorable character in James, the homeless drug addict who stumbles upon crucial information but whose marginalized status means his attempts to help are met with suspicion and violence. Special effects and practical effects teams worked throughout the production to create the film's supernatural elements while maintaining a grounded, realistic aesthetic. The goal was to have the horror emerge from recognizable reality rather than existing in a completely fantastical realm. This approach required careful integration of practical effects with the natural environment, ensuring that moments of supernatural intervention felt shocking precisely because they violated the otherwise realistic world of the film. The film's climactic sequences required complex choreography and stunt coordination. The confrontation between various characters at Alex's house involved intricate fight choreography that needed to feel desperate and real rather than stylized. The production's stunt team worked closely with the actors to develop sequences that would be both exciting and believable, with appropriate attention to character motivation and emotional stakes. Throughout the Atlanta shoot, Cregger maintained his vision for a film that would transcend simple genre categorization. He wanted Weapons to function as horror, mystery, and drama simultaneously, requiring tonal control that could shift between modes without feeling disjointed. This ambition meant that every scene needed to work on multiple levels, providing immediate visceral impact while also contributing to the larger thematic and narrative structure. The production's success in managing its complex logistics while maintaining creative ambition was evident in the positive reception the film would ultimately receive. The Atlanta filming locations provided both practical advantages and aesthetic opportunities, allowing the production to create a convincing small-town setting while taking advantage of experienced local crew members and production infrastructure. As filming wrapped in July 2024, the production moved into post-production with extensive footage that would need to be carefully assembled to realize Cregger's vision for the nonlinear narrative structure. The shoot had provided all the necessary elements, but the real challenge
would come in the editing room, where the film's complex timeline and multiple perspectives would need to be woven into a coherent and compelling whole. Post-production. The post-production phase of Weapons presented unique challenges due to the film's ambitious narrative structure and the need to maintain tension while juggling multiple storylines and time periods. Editors would need to assemble the footage in a way that preserved clarity while also building suspense and withholding crucial information until dramatically appropriate moments. The editing process focused on calibrating the reveal of information to maximize both mystery and emotional impact. Cregger's script structure, inspired by films like Magnolia and the nonlinear storytelling of A Visit from the Goon Squad, required finding the right rhythm for shifting between different character perspectives and time frames. The goal was to create a mosaic where each piece added context and recontextualized previous scenes without becoming confusing or frustrating for audiences. One significant post-production challenge involved the film's ending. The initial cut of the film concluded with the silent shot of Matthew, Archer's son, without further elaboration or emotional resolution. This ending was shown at test screenings, where it received negative reactions from preview audiences who felt the conclusion was too abrupt and didn't provide adequate closure for the emotional journey they had experienced throughout the film. In response to this feedback, Cregger made the decision to add the voiceover from the child narrator who had introduced the film's premise. This narration provided context about what happened to the characters after Aunt Gladys's death, explaining that her demise freed her victims, though Alex's parents remained catatonic, unable to recover from the trauma they had endured. The narration also revealed that Alex moved in with a different aunt and that some of the children eventually began to speak again, giving audiences a sense of the aftermath and suggesting both recovery and lasting damage. This change demonstrated Cregger's willingness to respond to audience feedback while maintaining his artistic vision. The added narration didn't fundamentally alter the film's ending but provided emotional resolution that test audiences had found lacking. It was a compromise that served the story without compromising its integrity, offering closure while acknowledging that some wounds don't fully heal. The color grading process was crucial in establishing the film's visual atmosphere and supporting its tonal shifts. The colorist worked to create a palette that could feel simultaneously grounded in everyday reality and pregnant with unease. The goal was to make the familiar seem slightly off, using subtle adjustments to color and contrast to generate discomfort even in apparently ordinary scenes. This approach supported the film's central conceit that horror lurks within the mundane, that ordinary communities can harbor extraordinary evil. Sound design and mixing played essential roles in building tension and creating scares. The sound team worked to develop a soundscape that would support the film's psychological horror elements while also delivering effective jump scares when appropriate. This required careful layering of ambient sounds, musical cues, and precisely timed sound effects. The goal was to create an audio environment that kept audiences on edge, using both silence and sudden loud moments strategically rather than relying exclusively on volume to generate fear. The visual effects team worked to enhance practical effects and create the supernatural elements that couldn't be achieved entirely in camera. Given the film's relatively modest budget of $38 million, the VFX work needed to be strategic and efficient, focusing resources on moments where digital enhancement would have the greatest impact. The team worked to maintain a realistic aesthetic even when depicting supernatural events, ensuring that the horror felt tangible and immediate rather than abstract or overly stylized. The test screening process proved invaluable in refining the final cut. Beyond the ending adjustment, the screenings provided data about which sequences worked effectively and which needed tightening or restructuring. Cregger's deal with Warner Brothers had included Final Cut privilege pending positive test screening reactions, so these preview showings carried additional significance. The strong positive response from test audiences not only validated Cregger's work but also secured his creative control over the finished film. The overwhelmingly positive test screening reactions ultimately influenced Warner Brothers' release strategy. The film had originally been scheduled for a January 2026 theatrical release, but the studio decided to move the date significantly forward to August 2025 based on the strong test screening performance. This decision reflected the studio's confidence that they had a commercial and critical hit on their hands, one that could anchor the summer movie season rather than being positioned in the typically slower January period. Throughout post-production, Cregger maintained collaborative relationships with his key creative partners while exercising final authority over major decisions. This balance between collaboration and clear vision proved essential for maintaining the film's coherence despite its complexity. The post-production team worked efficiently to meet the new accelerated release schedule while ensuring that no aspect of the film felt rushed or compromised. The marketing team began developing promotional materials during post-production, creating trailers and promotional art that would intrigue potential audiences without revealing too much about the plot. This proved challenging given the film's mystery structure and multiple twists. The solution was to focus on the central premise of the children's disappearance and the community's response while maintaining ambiguity about the supernatural elements and the true nature of the threat. As post-production concluded in early 2025, Weapons emerged as a carefully crafted horror mystery that balanced genre thrills with genuine emotional depth and thematic complexity. The film that emerged from the editing room demonstrated that Cregger had successfully built upon the promise shown in Barbarian while developing his voice as a filmmaker. The musical score for Weapons represented a crucial element in establishing the film's unsettling atmosphere and emotional resonance. The soundtrack was composed collaboratively by Ryan Holiday, Hayes Holiday, and director Zach Cregger himself, marking Cregger's contribution not just as filmmaker but also as co-composer. This collaborative approach ensured that the music would be intimately integrated with the film's vision rather than feeling like an afterthought or separate element. The decision to have Cregger participate in scoring the film reflected his comprehensive artistic vision for the project. By contributing to the music, he could ensure that the audio and visual elements worked in perfect harmony, creating a unified aesthetic experience. This level of involvement from a director in the scoring process, while not unprecedented, is relatively uncommon and speaks to Cregger's desire for complete creative control over all aspects of the film. Ryan and Hayes Holiday brought professional expertise and musical sophistication to the scoring process. Their work needed to support the film's complex narrative structure, providing musical continuity while also differentiating between the various storylines and time periods. The score had to function both as a traditional horror movie soundtrack, building tension and punctuating scares, and as something more sophisticated that could support the film's dramatic and emotional moments. The soundtrack was officially released by Water Tower Music, Warner Brothers' in-house music label, On August 1, 2025, 1 week before the film's theatrical premiere, this advance release allowed fans and critics to experience the music independently while building anticipation for the film itself. The strategic timing of the soundtrack release created additional promotional opportunities as music publications and film websites discussed the score. The complete soundtrack contained 36 tracks, reflecting the film's extended runtime of 2 hours and 8 minutes and its complex structure. This substantial number of tracks indicated a score that provided nearly continuous musical accompaniment rather than relying on long stretches of silence. The individual tracks presumably corresponded to different sections of the film, with each piece of music carefully calibrated to support specific scenes and emotional beats. Beyond the original score, Weapons incorporated 2 significant pre-existing songs that bookended the film, providing additional emotional and thematic resonance. The opening sequence featured Beware of Darkness by George Harrison, the former Beatles' warning about spiritual and existential threats. This choice was particularly apt given the film's themes of hidden danger and the presence of evil within seemingly normal circumstances. Harrison's song, with its melancholic tone and ominous lyrics, set the perfect mood for the disturbing events that would unfold. The selection of this specific Harrison track demonstrated careful attention to how popular music could enhance the film's themes rather than simply providing period flavor or name recognition. The end credits featured Under the Porch by Management, an American indie rock band known for their experimental and psychedelic approach to pop music. This choice provided a stark contrast to the intensity of the film's conclusion, offering a moment of release and reflection as audiences processed what they had witnessed. The selection of Management suggested a desire to leave audiences with something contemporary and slightly unsettling rather than providing easy closure or catharsis. The use of those 2 songs created a musical framework for the film, with Harrison's track establishing the ominous tone and Management's providing a complex emotional exit. Between these bookends, the original score by The Holidays and Kreger could develop the film's unique sonic identity, supporting the narrative without overwhelming it. The score's approach to horror music likely incorporated both traditional genre elements and more innovative techniques. Contemporary horror scoring has moved beyond simple jump-scare stingers to embrace more ambient and psychological approaches that create sustained unease. The Weapons score presumably employed this more sophisticated approach, using subtle dissonance, unusual instrumental combinations, and strategic silence to generate tension. Critical responses to the film frequently praised its sound design and musical choices, suggesting that the score successfully supported the film's ambitious goals. Reviewers noted how the film created and maintained tension throughout its runtime, an achievement that would be impossible without effective musical support. The score apparently avoided the pitfall of being too obvious or intrusive, instead working subtly to enhance the viewing experience without calling attention to itself. The collaborative nature of the scoring process between the Holiday brothers and Kreger likely involved extensive discussion about the emotional arc of different scenes and the overall tonal trajectory of the film. The 3 composers would have worked closely with the sound design team to ensure that music and sound effects complemented rather than competed with each other. This coordination was essential for creating the complex soundscape that would immerse audiences in the film's world. The decision to release the soundtrack commercially suggested confidence that the music could stand alone as a listening experience separate from the film. Horror film scores have developed dedicated fan bases, with collectors and enthusiasts seeking out music from both classic and contemporary genre entries. The availability of the Weapons score allowed fans to revisit the film's atmosphere and themes through music long after their theatrical experience. The music for Weapons represented just one element of a comprehensive audio design that included dialogue, sound effects, and ambient noise. However, as with all effective film scoring, the music provided the emotional foundation that allowed other elements to register with appropriate impact. The score guided audiences' emotional responses, suggesting when to feel dread, when to feel sympathy, and went to feel the desperate hope that perhaps things might turn out okay despite all evidence to the contrary. Released theatrical. The theatrical release strategy for Weapons underwent significant changes as Warner Brothers responded to the film's exceptional performance in test screenings. Originally, the film had been scheduled for a January 16, 2026 release date, positioning it in the traditionally slower first quarter of the year when studios often release films with more modest commercial expectations or awards-focused prestige pictures that couldn't find room in the crowded late-year calendar. However, the overwhelmingly positive response from test audiences convinced Warner Brothers executives that they had a potential hit on their hands rather than a modest genre offering. The decision was made to move the release date significantly forward to August 8, 2025, placing it in the lucrative summer movie season where box office potential was considerably higher. This dramatic rescheduling reflected the studio's confidence in the film's commercial viability and their belief that it could compete with big-budget summer tentpoles rather than being relegated to the less competitive winter period. This release date shift represented a nearly 5-month acceleration of the film's debut, requiring all aspects of the marketing and distribution operation to adjust accordingly. The compressed timeline meant that promotional campaigns needed to be developed and executed more quickly, that marketing materials needed to be finalized earlier, and that the logistical aspects of securing theatrical bookings and coordinating with exhibitors needed to happen on an accelerated schedule. Warner Brothers gave Weapons a wide release, opening in approximately 3,200 theaters across the United States and Canada. This level of distribution indicated the studio's commitment to the film's commercial potential and their belief that it could appeal to mainstream audiences rather than just genre enthusiasts. A wide release requires significant marketing investment and represents a vote of confidence from the studio that the film will perform well enough to justify the substantial costs involved in distributing and promoting a film across thousands of locations. The marketing campaign emphasized the film's premise of mysteriously vanishing children while carefully preserving the mystery elements that made the story compelling. Trailers and television spots focused on the central question of what happened to the children and who might be responsible, creating intrigue without revealing the supernatural elements or the specific nature of the threat. This approach generated curiosity while avoiding the common pitfall of showing too much in promotional materials and spoiling key plot developments. The campaign also emphasized Krager's involvement, positioning Weapons as from the director of Barbarian to capitalize on the goodwill and name recognition generated by his previous film. For audiences who had enjoyed Barbarian, this association promised another innovative and frightening experience. The marketing highlighted the film's ensemble cast, particularly Josh Brolin and Julia Garner, both respected actors with proven box office appeal and critical acclaim. An interesting detail of the theatrical release involved the timing of the earliest Thursday preview screenings, which were scheduled for 2:17 p.m. This timing directly referenced the film's plot, in which the children disappear at exactly 2:17 a.m. This kind of detail-oriented marketing creates additional engagement with fans who appreciate the connection between the promotion and the content, generating social media conversation and demonstrating the care put into all aspects of the film's presentation. The August 8, 2025 release date positioned Weapons against other summer offerings including Freakier Friday, a sequel to the popular body swap comedy, and Sketch, another horror offering. The competitive landscape of summer releases meant that Weapons needed to immediately establish itself as the must-see film of the weekend to capture audience attention before other films could steal market share. The theatrical release strategy proved successful beyond Warner Brothers' expectations. The film not only topped the box office in its opening weekend but maintained strongholds in subsequent weeks, demonstrating the kind of positive word of mouth that sustains theatrical runs. The wide release allowed the film to reach audiences across diverse markets, proving that sophisticated horror could succeed in mainstream theatrical exhibition rather than being limited to urban art houses or genre-specific venues. The theatrical presentation of Weapons benefited from modern exhibition technology including Dolby Atmos sound systems, IMAX screens, and 4K digital projection that could properly showcase the film's carefully crafted visuals and immersive audio design. These premium presentation formats commanded higher ticket prices while also providing audiences with a more impactful experience that justified the cost of theatrical exhibition versus waiting for home video. Home media. Following its successful theatrical run, Weapons moved through the typical windows of home entertainment distribution, making the film available to audiences who had missed its theatrical release or wanted to revisit it at home. The home media release strategy maximized revenue opportunities while respecting the theatrical exhibition window that remained important for maintaining relationships with theater chains. The film was first released on video on demand (VOD) platforms on September 9, 2025, approximately 1 month after its theatrical debut. This relatively quick transition from theaters to VOD reflected modern distribution realities where theatrical windows have compressed significantly from the traditional 90-day exclusivity period that was once standard. The VOD release allowed audiences to rent or purchase digital copies of the film through major platforms including iTunes, Amazon Prime Video, Google Play, and Vudu, among others. The VOD release strategy recognized that many potential viewers prefer the convenience of home viewing or live in areas without easy access to theatrical exhibition. By making the film available digitally while it was still part of the cultural conversation, Warner Brothers could capitalize on ongoing interest and word-of-mouth recommendations. The pricing typically follows an established pattern with rental prices around $5.99 and purchase prices around $19.99, providing options for different levels of consumer commitment. Physical media releases followed on October 14, 2025. Approximately 2 months after the theatrical debut and just over a month after the VOD release. Weapons was made available on DVD, Blu-ray, and Ultra HD Blu-ray formats, catering to collectors and enthusiasts who prefer physical media and appreciate the superior image and sound quality that disc-based formats can provide compared to streaming compression. The physical media releases typically included bonus features that added value for purchasers beyond simply owning a copy of the film. While specific bonus features were not detailed in available information, contemporary releases typically include behind-the-scenes documentaries, deleted scenes, commentary tracks from filmmakers and actors, and featurettes exploring various aspects of production. These extras provide additional context and entertainment for dedicated fans while justifying the higher price point of physical media compared to digital rental. The Ultra HD Blu-ray release was particularly significant for home theater enthusiasts, offering 4K resolution video with high dynamic range, HDR, color grading and lossless audio formats that could reproduce the film's sound design with theatrical fidelity. For viewers with appropriate equipment, the UHD release provided an experience closer to theatrical presentation than standard definition streaming or even regular Blu-ray could offer. The DVD release ensured that the film remained accessible to audiences who hadn't yet upgraded to high-definition formats or who wanted an affordable option for owning the film. Despite the decline of DVD as a format, it still represents a significant portion of the home video market, particularly in certain demographic segments and geographic regions. The final window in the traditional release sequence came on October 24, 2025, when Weapons was released on HBO Max, Warner Brothers' streaming platform. This release, coming approximately 2.5 months after the theatrical premiere, represented the film's entry into subscription streaming where audiences could watch it as part of their monthly subscription rather than paying for individual rental or purchase. The HBO Max release served multiple purposes for Warner Brothers. First, it provided additional value for HBO Max subscribers, potentially reducing churn and making the service more attractive to potential new subscribers. Second, it introduced the film to audiences who might not have been interested enough to pay for theatrical tickets or VOD rental but were willing to watch it as part of their existing subscription. Third, it kept the film in the cultural conversation and potentially generated renewed interest that could drive catalog sales of the physical media releases. The streaming release also made the film available internationally in territories where HBO Max, which operates under different names in some regions, such as Max in the United States, is available. This global reach ensured that international audiences could access the film even if it had received limited or no theatrical distribution in their territories. The comprehensive release strategy demonstrated Warner Bros.' expertise in extracting maximum value from successful films across multiple distribution windows. Each format served different audience segments and preferences while generating revenue at different price points. The staggered release also maintained ongoing interest in the film over several months rather than creating a single large burst of attention followed by rapid decline. The home media releases allowed the film to continue generating revenue long after its theatrical run had concluded, contributing to its overall profitability. For a film that cost $38 million to produce and generated over $268 million in theatrical box office alone, the additional home media revenue represented pure profit that would be split between the studio and participants with back-end deals like Kreger. The physical media releases also created opportunities for award consideration and critical re-evaluation. Films that might have been overlooked during their theatrical run sometimes find second lives through home video, where critics and awards voters can watch at their convenience. In Weapon's case, the home media releases coincided with the beginning of awards season, potentially keeping the film and its performances, particularly Amy Madigan's, in the conversation for year-end honors. Reception box office. Weapons achieved remarkable commercial success, grossing $268.3 million worldwide against its production budget of $38 million. This financial performance represented one of the most successful theatrical releases of 2025 and validated Warner Bros.' decision to move up the release date and give the film a wide theatrical release rather than treating it as a modest genre offering. In the United States and Canada, Weapons earned $151.6 million in domestic box office, while international territories contributed an additional $116.7 million, demonstrating the film's appeal across different markets and cultures. The relatively balanced split between domestic and international revenue, with domestic slightly ahead, reflected strong performance in North American markets while also showing that the film's themes and execution resonated globally. The film's opening weekend performance exceeded industry expectations and set the tone for its successful theatrical run. Released alongside Freakier Friday and Sketch, Weapons was projected to gross between $25 and $40 million from its 3,200 theaters opening weekend. The film exceeded even the upper end of these projections, ultimately debuting to $43.5 million and claiming the #1 position at the box office. The road to this impressive opening began with Thursday preview screenings that generated $5.7 million, a strong indicator of audience interest and anticipation. These preview numbers exceeded those of its main competitor, Freakier Friday, which earned $3.1 million in previews. The Thursday previews helped build momentum heading into the weekend while also providing early revenue that would count toward the overall opening weekend total. On its first official day of wide release, Friday, August 8, 2025, Weapons grossed $18.2 million including the Thursday preview numbers. This strong single-day total represented the film's best individual day and demonstrated that it had successfully captured audience attention. The Friday numbers set the pace for a weekend that would ultimately exceed studio expectations and establish Weapons as a major commercial success. The $43.5 million opening weekend represented a triumph for Warner Bros. And made history in the process. It marked the studio's sixth consecutive film to open at #1 with more than $40 million, an unprecedented streak that demonstrated Warner Bros.' hot hand in 2025. This streak spoke to the studio's ability to identify promising projects, develop them effectively, and market them successfully to audiences. Perhaps even more impressive than the strong opening was the film's performance in subsequent weekends, which demonstrated genuine audience enthusiasm and positive word of mouth rather than simple curiosity about a heavily marketed new release. In its second weekend, Weapons dropped only 44% from its opening, earning $24.4 million and maintaining its position at the top of the box office. This hold was remarkable for a horror film, a genre that typically experiences sharp weekend-to-weekend declines as audiences front-load their viewing in opening weekends. The 44% drop indicated that Weapons was attracting repeat viewers and benefiting from strong word-of-mouth recommendations that brought in audiences who hadn't seen it opening weekend. For context, horror films often dropped 60 to 70% in their second weekends, so Weapons' performance was exceptional and suggested it was playing more like a traditional crowd-pleaser than a typical genre entry. The film's third weekend saw it slip to second place behind a sing-along version of K-pop Demon Hunters, which opened to $19.2 million. Even in second position, Weapons earned a respectable $15.4 million, bringing its domestic total to over $80 million in just 3 weekends. The continued strong performance demonstrated the film's legs and its ability to maintain audience interest even as new releases competed for attention. By September 2025, Variety reported that Weapons was expected to make a theatrical profit of at least $65 million. This estimate considered not just the box office gross but also the various costs associated with theatrical distribution, including marketing expenses, distribution fees, and theater exhibition cuts. The $65 million profit figure represented an exceptional return on investment for the $38 million production budget and validated all the creative and business decisions that had brought the project to fruition. The film's international performance, while slightly less than its domestic gross, was nonetheless impressive for a horror film from a relatively new director without major international stars in the lead roles. Horror has traditionally been a more domestically focused genre, with international audiences sometimes less enthusiastic about American horror films. Weapons' ability to generate $116.7 million internationally demonstrated that its themes and execution transcended cultural boundaries and that sophisticated horror could find audiences worldwide. The total worldwide gross of $268.3 million placed Weapons among the most successful horror films of the decade and represented a multiple of more than 7 times its production budget. This kind of return makes film studios very happy and virtually guarantees that the filmmakers involved will have opportunities for future projects. For Gregor specifically, this success cemented his status as a major creative force in contemporary horror and ensured that his next projects would receive serious consideration from major studios. The financial success had direct implications for the talent involved. Gregor's deal included 50 backhand points after deferring $2 million of his upfront payment, meaning he would participate substantially in the film's profits, with the film generating at least $65 million in theatrical profit before accounting for home media and streaming revenue. Gregor's backhand participation likely represented a substantial payday beyond his initial $10 million fee. Warner Brothers' decision to move the release date forward to August rather than keeping the original January 2026 date proved prescient. Summer releases typically have higher commercial potential than winter releases due to school vacation schedules, better weather that encourages movie-going, and the general atmosphere of summer blockbuster season. Had Weapons been released in January as originally planned, it almost certainly would not have achieved the same level of commercial success. The film's performance also benefited Warner Brothers' overall market position in 2025. The studio's streak of #1 openings demonstrated momentum that helped with future deals, marketing partnerships, and relationships with exhibitors. Success breeds success in the film industry, and Warner Brothers' hot streak made it easier to attract talent and projects for future development. Critical response: Weapons received overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics, establishing it as one of the most acclaimed films of 2025 and solidifying Zach Gregor's reputation as a significant voice in contemporary cinema. The critical consensus praised the film's ambitious narrative structure, sophisticated approach to genre elements, and strong performances across its ensemble cast. On Rotten Tomatoes, the premier aggregator of critical reviews, Weapons achieved a 93% positive rating based on reviews from 377 critics. This score placed it among the best reviewed films of the year and demonstrated unanimous critical approval. The website's consensus statement captured the general critical response, Zach Gregor spins an expertly crafted yarn of terrifying mystery and thrilling intrigue in Weapons, a sophomore triumph that solidifies his status as a master of horror. The Rotten Tomatoes consensus highlighted several key elements that critics appreciated: the effective mystery elements that kept audiences engaged, the genuine scares and tension that satisfied genre expectations, and the perception that Gregor had successfully followed up his breakthrough film Barbarian with something even more ambitious and accomplished. The sophomore triumph language specifically addressed concerns about whether Gregor can avoid the sophomore slump that often affects directors after an initial success. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average approach rather than a simple positive-negative count, assigned Weapons a score of 81 out of 100 based on 48 critic reviews. This score indicated universal acclaim according to Metacritic's rating system and placed the film in the top tier of critically reviewed releases. The Metacritic score suggested that even critics who might have had some reservations still rated the film highly overall, contributing to the strong aggregate score. Audience reception metrics also indicated strong satisfaction with the film. Post-track surveys gave the film an average rating of 4 out of 5 stars, with 65% of respondents indicating they would definitely recommend it to others. These numbers demonstrated that the film succeeded with general audiences as well as critics, an important indicator of commercial staying power since positive word-of-mouth drives sustained box office performance beyond opening weekend. Curiosity Cinema Score, which surveys audiences on opening night and provides grades on an A+ to F scale, gave Weapons an A- grade. This score indicated strong audience satisfaction, though not the highest possible grade. The A- suggested that while most viewers enjoyed the film, some found elements that didn't completely satisfy them, possibly related to the dark tone, ambiguous elements, or the intensity of certain sequences. For a horror film, however, an A- represents a strong showing, as the genre typically receives lower cinema score grades than comedies or family films due to audiences' varying tolerances for frightening or disturbing content. Individual critical reviews provided detailed analysis of the film's strengths and occasional weaknesses. The San Francisco Chronicle praised Gregor as a true horror auteur, using language typically reserved for established masters of the genre. This designation suggested that critics saw Gregor as not just competent but genuinely visionary, bringing a distinctive personal style and thematic concerns to his work rather than simply executing genre formulas. Empire magazine awarded Weapons a perfect 5 out of 5 stars and marveled that Gregor had managed to transform parental grief over missing children into crowd-pleasing entertainment. This observation highlighted one of the film's most impressive achievements: taking subject matter that could easily be exploitative or depressing and crafting something that provided both emotional depth and genuine entertainment value. The review suggested that Gregor had navigated a difficult tonal balance with skill and sensitivity. Brian Tallarico of RogerRabbit.com gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4 and deemed it superior to Barbarian, Gregor's previous film. Tallarico praised the film's refusal to connect every narrative dot in the manner of recent elevated horror films, suggesting that the ambiguity and mystery served the story rather than frustrating it. He also noted that the film could be read as a school shooting allegory, though he acknowledged this interpretation wasn't definitive, highlighting how the film's themes allowed for multiple readings without requiring any single explanation. Variety's review praised the film enthusiastically, comparing it favorably to the dark fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. The review noted that regardless of how individual viewers felt about the ending, Gregor had achieved something remarkable by creating a story where characters kill on command and audiences have difficulty sleeping afterward. This description captured both the film's disturbing content and its effectiveness in creating lasting impact on viewers. Screen Daily's Tim Grierson praised the finale as superbly orchestrated and commended Gregor for answering the riddles he has teased throughout the runtime. This positive assessment contradicted some other critics who felt the ending was too conventional or didn't match the film's ambitious setup. Grierson's perspective suggested that when the narrative pieces clicked together, they created a satisfying whole that rewarded close attention to the film's various storylines and details. The Verge's Charles Pulliam-Moore highlighted the film's meditation on how communities often conjure up convenient boogeymen to blame, rather than confronting the things that actually endanger children. This thematic reading emphasized the film's social commentary and
suggested it worked on allegorical levels beyond its literal supernatural plot. The observation that communities create scapegoats resonated with contemporary discussions about responsibility, blame, and the ways societies respond to tragedy. IGN's Tom Jorgensen gave the film 9 out of 10, calling it righteous, fully actualized genre bender and praising how Cregger had honed Barbarian's blend of unbearable tension and dark humor to a new level of razor sharpness. This assessment emphasized the film's technical accomplishment and Cregger's growth as a filmmaker, suggesting that Weapons represented a refinement and expansion of the approach he had developed in his previous work. The Associated Press awarded 4.5 stars out of 5, noting that while Barbarian had announced an exciting new voice in filmmaking, Weapons didn't disappoint despite lacking the advantage of surprise. This observation acknowledged that Cregger faced higher expectations with his second film and still managed to exceed them, demonstrating that his success with Barbarian wasn't a fluke but evidence of genuine talent and vision. Not all reviews were entirely positive. The New York Times' Manila Dargis, while acknowledging the film's accomplishments, felt that the segmented structure and overlapping narratives sometimes felt like delay tactics rather than essential storytelling choices. This criticism suggested that some viewers might find the nonlinear approach more frustrating than rewarding, perceiving it as artificial complexity rather than organic structure. The Rap's William Bibbiani praised the cinematography for finding the eeriest camera angle in damn near every scene but criticized the ending as contrived. Bibbiani felt that Cregger had invited audiences to consider more powerful thematic possibilities for over an hour before revealing an explanation that didn't match those expectations. This mixed review reflected a subset of critical opinion that appreciated much of the film's execution while finding its resolution disappointing. The critical conversation around Weapons extended beyond simple thumbs up or thumbs down assessments to engage with the film's themes, structure, and place within contemporary horror cinema. Critics debated whether the film worked as an allegory for school shootings, community scapegoating, or something more abstract. They analyzed the effectiveness of the non-linear structure and discussed whether the ending paid off the elaborate setup or represented a letdown. Amy Madigan's performance as Aunt Gladys received particular critical attention and acclaim. Multiple reviews singled out her work as exceptional, with some suggesting she deserved award consideration. The character's combination of grotesque horror and darkly comic energy required precise calibration, and critics recognized that Madigan had achieved something special in making Gladys both terrifying and oddly entertaining. The ensemble performances were generally praised, with critics noting that the film's success depended on every actor delivering authentic, committed work. Julia Garner's portrayal of the beleaguered teacher Justine, Josh Brolin's desperate father Archer, and the various supporting players all received positive mentions in reviews. The critical consensus suggested that Cregger had assembled a cast that elevated the material and made even potentially stock characters feel three-dimensional and human. The critical reception translated into award recognition, with Madigan receiving nominations for an Academy Award and a Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actress. She ultimately won the Critics' Choice Award in the same category, validating the critical praise for her performance. The award recognition helped maintain the film's profile throughout the fall and winter of 2025, keeping it in the cultural conversation months after its theatrical release. The film's appearance on various critics' year-end top 10 lists further demonstrated its critical impact. While exact placements varied, Weapons consistently appeared on lists from major publications and critics groups, cementing its status as one of 2025's most significant releases. This sustained critical attention helped drive continued interest in the film as it moved through home video windows and began streaming on HBO Max. The Slate Film Critics Annual Movie Club featured extended discussion of Weapons, with critic Alison Wilmore describing it as having the most quietly haunting relationship to narrative of any 2025 film. She praised how the film circled ever closer to its central mystery while examining how the community responded to tragedy by seeking convenient explanations and targets for blame. This kind of thoughtful critical engagement demonstrated that Weapons had given critics substantial material to analyze and discuss beyond simple genre pleasures. The critical consensus around Weapons suggested that it had succeeded in its ambitions to create sophisticated horror that worked both as entertainment and as serious cinema. Critics appreciated that the film delivered genuine scares and suspense while also engaging with meaningful themes about community, blame, grief, and the nature of evil. The film avoided being so intellectual that it ceased to be frightening, maintaining its horror credentials while also functioning as character-driven drama. The overwhelmingly positive critical response, combined with strong commercial performance, established Weapons as a watershed moment for Zach Cregger's career and a significant entry in the horror canon. The film demonstrated that horror could be both artistically ambitious and commercially successful, that genre filmmaking didn't require compromising vision, and that audiences would respond enthusiastically to challenging material when it was executed with skill and confidence. The critical and commercial success of Weapons had implications beyond the film itself, potentially influencing how studios approached horror projects and what kinds of creative risks they were willing to take. The film proved that sophisticated, non-linear horror mysteries could find mainstream audiences rather than being limited to art house releases. It demonstrated that horror fans wanted more than simple jump scares and familiar formulas, that they appreciated ambitious storytelling and thematic depth. For Zach Cregger, the critical reception of Weapons cemented his position as one of the most important voices in contemporary horror filmmaking. The combination of critical acclaim and box office success meant he would have significant leverage in developing future projects, with studios eager to back whatever he chose to do next. In interviews following the film's release, Cregger discussed potential sequels and prequels to Weapons while also mentioning other projects he was developing, including an adaptation of Resident Evil. The film's success also elevated its cast members, particularly Amy Madigan, whose performance generated substantial award attention and introduced her to a new generation of filmgoers who might not have been familiar with her earlier work. For Julia Garner and Josh Brolin, both already established actors, Weapons added prestigious genre credentials to their resumes and demonstrated their range beyond the roles that had made them famous. As 2025 drew to a close, Weapons stood as one of the year's defining films, a work that had satisfied both critics and audiences while generating substantial profits for its studio. The film's success validated the creative risks taken by Cregger and supported by Warner Bros., demonstrating that original horror could compete with established franchises and branded content. In an era increasingly dominated by sequels, prequels, and intellectual property exploitation, Weapons proved that fresh voices telling new stories could still capture the culture's attention and imagination. The lasting impact of Weapons would extend beyond its immediate box office and critical reception. The film established creative templates that other filmmakers would study and potentially emulate, demonstrating effective approaches to nonlinear storytelling, ensemble horror, and thematic depth within genre frameworks. Film schools would screen and analyze Weapons, discussing how Cregger managed tone, structured revelation, and balanced horror with other dramatic modes. For horror as a genre, Weapons represented an important moment of validation and evolution. It demonstrated that horror could be taken seriously as cinema while still delivering the visceral pleasures audiences expected from the genre. The film's success suggested that the so-called elevated horror movement, which included films like Get Out, Hereditary, and The Witch, had moved from the margins to the mainstream, with audiences increasingly sophisticated in their genre expectations and willing to embrace challenging, ambiguous narratives. The critical and commercial triumph of Weapons in 2025 would be remembered as a watershed moment, when a filmmaker took creative risks that paid off spectacularly, when a studio supported artistic vision with substantial resources, and when audiences demonstrated their appetite for horror that engaged their minds as well as their adrenal glands. The film's legacy would continue to influence horror filmmaking for years to come, inspiring filmmakers to take chances and audiences to demand more from their scary movies than simple thrills and predictable formulas. The discourse surrounding Weapons extended into academic and theoretical discussions about contemporary horror cinema. Film scholars began analyzing the movie's approach to community trauma and collective guilt, examining how it used supernatural elements as metaphors for very real social dynamics. The film sparked conversations about how horror cinema processes contemporary anxieties, from concerns about child safety to questions about institutional trust and community cohesion. Media coverage of Weapons continued throughout the fall of 2025, with major publications running retrospective pieces, filmmaker interviews, and analytical essays exploring various aspects of the production and its themes. Entertainment Weekly published an extensive behind-the-scenes feature that included exclusive photographs from the production and detailed discussions with Kreger about his creative process. The Hollywood Reporter ran a comprehensive interview examining the film's business success and its implications for future genre productions. The film also generated substantial online discussion, with fan communities dissecting every detail of the plot, debating interpretations of ambiguous elements, and creating elaborate theories about backstory and mythology not explicitly addressed in the film. Reddit forums dedicated to horror cinema featured extensive threads analyzing Weapons, with users sharing observations about subtle details, hidden connections between storylines, and thematic patterns that might not be immediately apparent on first viewing. YouTube creators produced numerous video essays examining Weapons from various analytical perspectives. Some focused on the technical aspects of filmmaking, breaking down specific scenes to explain how Kreger achieved particular effects or emotional responses. Others explored thematic and allegorical interpretations, examining how the film might comment on contemporary social issues or psychological phenomena. Still others placed Weapons in the context of horror cinema history, tracing influences and connections to previous works while arguing for the film's importance in the genre's evolution. The sustained critical and popular attention helped Weapons maintain its cultural relevance far beyond the typical theatrical release cycle. Rather than being quickly forgotten as audiences moved on to the next release, the film became a reference point in discussions about horror cinema, effective storytelling, and the intersection of genre entertainment with serious artistic ambition. References to Weapons appeared in reviews of subsequent horror films, with critics comparing new releases favorably or unfavorably to Kreger's achievement. The film's impact on horror filmmaking became apparent as other projects in development began emphasizing similar structural approaches or thematic concerns. While Weapons didn't single-handedly create new trends, it certainly accelerated existing movements within horror cinema toward more complex narratives, ensemble casts, and willingness to take tonal risks. Studios became more receptive to pitches for horror projects that defied conventional formulas, using Weapons as evidence that audiences would respond to innovation rather than demanding familiar patterns. For New Line Cinema specifically, Weapons represented a return to the kind of horror filmmaking that had defined the studio during its independent years before being acquired by Warner Brothers. The success reminded executives that New Line had built its reputation on taking chances with horror films, from the Nightmare on Elm Street series through modern classics like the Conjuring franchise. Weapons fit comfortably in this legacy while also pushing the genre in new directions. The international reception of Weapons also deserves examination. While the film's core story about missing children and community suspicion had universal resonance, different territories responded to various aspects of the film in distinctive ways. European critics tended to emphasize the film's formal qualities and narrative structure, appreciating its resemblance to art cinema approaches to genre filmmaking. Asian markets responded strongly to the film's family dynamics and the horror of parental helplessness. Latin American audiences connected with the film's examination of how communities respond to inexplicable tragedy, perhaps reflecting regional experiences with violence and social disruption. The subtitle and dubbing work required for international distribution presented interesting challenges. The film's dialogue-heavy scenes and overlapping conversations required careful translation to preserve meaning and dramatic impact across linguistic barriers. Dubbing directors worked to maintain the emotional intensity of performances while adapting dialogue to different languages with different rhythms and syntax. The results were generally successful, with international audiences able to engage with the film's complex narrative without being hindered by translation issues. The merchandising around Weapons remained relatively limited compared to major franchise films, reflecting both the film's horror content and its more adult orientation. However, some collectibles did appear, including high-quality figures of Aunt Gladys that captured Amy Madigan's memorable performance in physical form. Poster collectors sought out the various theatrical one-sheets and international versions, which often featured different imagery and design approaches. Soundtrack collectors purchased the vinyl release of the score, appreciating the opportunity to own a physical artifact of the film's musical achievement. The phenomenon of repeat viewings contributed significantly to Weapons' sustained box office performance. Many viewers returned to theaters to experience the film again, picking up details they had missed on first viewing and appreciating how the non-linear structure revealed new meanings on subsequent watches. The film rewarded close attention and multiple viewings in ways that more straightforward narratives did not, creating a dedicated audience willing to pay for theatrical experiences multiple times. Social media played a crucial role in sustaining interest in Weapons throughout its theatrical run and beyond. The film became a frequent topic of discussion on platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, where users shared reactions, theories, and recommendations. Hashtags related to the film trended multiple times during its release window, generating free publicity and word-of-mouth marketing that supplemented Warner Bros.' official promotional campaigns. Memorable scenes and lines from the film became memes and reference points in online discourse, further extending its cultural reach. The success of Weapons also had implications for Zach Cregger's comedy background with The Whitest Kids You Know. While Cregger had successfully transitioned to horror filmmaking with Barbarian, some industry observers had wondered whether this shift represented a permanent career change or a temporary detour. The success of Weapons answered those questions definitively, establishing Cregger as a serious horror filmmaker whose comedy background informed his work but didn't define or limit it. The dark humor present in Weapons demonstrated how his comedic sensibilities enhanced rather than undermined the horror, providing moments of relief and absurdity that made the frightening elements more effective by contrast. Looking forward, discussions about potential sequels or expanded universe possibilities began almost immediately after the film's release. Cregger's comments about having discussed a prequel focused on Aunt Gladys with Warner Bros. Generated excitement among fans eager to learn more about the villain's origins and backstory. The structure of Weapons, with its hints at a larger mythology and unexplored aspects of its supernatural elements, left room for continuation while also working perfectly well as a standalone story. However, Cregger also expressed interest in pursuing other projects before returning to the world of Weapons, suggesting that any sequel or prequel would not be his immediate next film. This approach demonstrated artistic integrity and creative ambition, showing that Cregger wanted to continue growing as a filmmaker rather than simply capitalizing on a successful formula. His announced attachment to a Resident Evil film indicated his interest in working within established franchises while bringing his distinctive sensibility to familiar intellectual property. The legacy of Weapons in 2025 cinema extended beyond simple box office numbers or critical praise. The film represented a moment when artistic ambition, commercial calculation, and audience appetite aligned perfectly to create both financial success and cultural impact. It demonstrated that horror cinema could be taken seriously without losing its visceral power, that complex narratives could find mainstream audiences, and that original stories could compete with established franchises in the commercial marketplace. As film historians and critics looked back on 2025 in years to come, Weapons would likely be remembered as one of the defining films of its year, a work that captured something essential about contemporary anxieties while also advancing the craft of horror filmmaking. The film's influence would be measured not just in its immediate reception but in how it inspired and influenced the films that came after it, pushing the genre toward greater sophistication and ambition while never forgetting that horror must ultimately be effective at scaring audiences and delivering the emotional and visceral experiences that draw people to the genre in the first place. The final window in the traditional release sequence came on October 24, 2025, when Weapons was released on HBO Max, Warner Bros. Streaming platform. This release, coming approximately 2.5 months after the theatrical premiere, represented the film's entry into subscription streaming where audiences could watch it as part of their monthly subscription rather than paying for individual rental or purchase. The HBO Max release served multiple purposes for Warner Bros. First, it provided additional value for HBO Max subscribers, potentially reducing churn and making the service more attractive to potential new subscribers. Second, it introduced the film to audiences who might not have been interested enough to pay for theatrical tickets or VOD rental but were willing to watch it as part of their existing subscription. Third, it kept the film in the cultural conversation and potentially generated renewed interest that could drive catalog sales of the physical media releases. The streaming release also made the film available internationally in territories where HBO Max, which operates under different names in some regions, such as Max in the United States, is available. This global reach ensured that international audiences could access the film even if it had received limited or no theatrical distribution in their territories. The comprehensive release strategy demonstrated Warner Bros.' expertise in extracting maximum value from successful films across multiple distribution windows. Each format served different audience segments and preferences while generating revenue at different price points. The staggered release also maintained ongoing interest in the film over several months rather than creating a single large burst of attention followed by rapid decline. The home media releases allowed the film to continue generating revenue long after its theatrical run had concluded, contributing to its overall profitability. For a film that cost $38 million to produce and generated over $268 million in theatrical box office alone, the additional home media revenue represented pure profit that would be split between the studio and participants with back-end deals like Gregor. The physical media releases also created opportunities for award consideration and critical re-evaluation. Films that might have been overlooked during their theatrical runs sometimes find second lives through home video, where critics and awards voters can watch at their convenience. In Weapons' case, the home media releases coincided with the beginning of awards season, potentially keeping the film and its performances, particularly Amy Madigan's, in the conversation for year-end honors. Reception box office. Weapons achieved remarkable commercial success, grossing $268.3 million worldwide against its production budget of $38 million. This financial performance represented one of the most successful theatrical releases of 2025 and validated Warner Bros.' decision to move up the release date and give the film a wide theatrical release rather than treating it as a modest genre offering. In the United States and Canada, Weapons earned $151.6 million in domestic box office, while international territories contributed an additional $116.7 million, demonstrating the film's appeal across different markets and cultures. The relatively balanced split between domestic and international revenue, with domestic slightly ahead, reflected strong performance in North American markets while also showing that the film's themes and execution resonated globally. The film's opening weekend performance exceeded industry expectations and set the tone for its successful theatrical run. Released alongside Freakier Friday and Sketch, Weapons was projected to gross between $25 and $40 million from its 3,200 theaters opening weekend. The film exceeded even the upper end of these projections, ultimately debuting to $43.5 million and claiming the #1 position at the box office. The road to this impressive opening began with Thursday preview screenings that generated $5.7 million. A strong indicator of audience interest and anticipation. These preview numbers exceeded those of its main competitor, Freakier Friday, which earned $3.1 million in previews. The Thursday previews helped build momentum heading into the weekend while also providing early revenue that would count toward the overall opening weekend total. On its first official day of wide release, Friday, August 8, 2025, Weapons grossed $18.2 million including the Thursday preview numbers. This strong single-day total represented the film's best individual day and demonstrated that it had successfully captured audience attention. The Friday numbers set the pace for a weekend that would ultimately exceed studio expectations and establish Weapons as a major commercial success. The $43.5 million opening weekend represented a triumph for Warner Bros. And made history in the process. It marked the studio's 6th consecutive film to open at #1 with more than $40 million, an unprecedented streak that demonstrated Warner Bros.' hot hand in 2025. This streak spoke to the studio's ability to identify promising projects, develop them effectively, and market them successfully to audiences. Perhaps even more impressive than the strong opening was the film's performance in subsequent weekends, which demonstrated genuine audience enthusiasm and positive word of mouth rather than simple curiosity about a heavily marketed new release. In its second weekend, Weapons dropped only 44% from its opening, earning $24.4 million and maintaining its position at the top of the box office. This hold was remarkable for a horror film, a genre that typically experiences sharp weekend-to-weekend declines as audiences front-load their viewing in opening weekends. The 44% drop indicated that Weapons was attracting repeat viewers and benefiting from strong word-of-mouth recommendations that brought in audiences who hadn't seen it opening weekend. For context, horror films often drop 60 to 70% in their second weekends, so Weapons' performance was exceptional and suggested it was playing more like a traditional crowd pleaser than a typical genre entry. The film's third weekend saw it slip to second place behind a sing-along version of K-Pop Demon Hunters, which opened to $19.2 million. Even in second position, Weapons earned a respectable $15.4 million. Bringing its domestic total to over $80 million in just 3 weekends. The continued strong performance demonstrated the film's legs and its ability to maintain audience interest even as new releases competed for attention. By September 2025, Variety reported that Weapons was expected to make a theatrical profit of at least $65 million. This estimate considered not just the box office gross but also the various costs associated with theatrical distribution, including marketing expenses, distribution fees, and theater exhibition cuts. The $65 million profit figure represented an exceptional return on investment for the $38 million production budget and validated all the creative and business decisions that had brought the project to fruition. The film's international performance, while slightly less than its domestic gross, was nonetheless impressive for a horror film from a relatively new director without major international stars in the lead roles. Horror has traditionally been a more domestically focused genre, with international audiences sometimes less enthusiastic about American horror films. Weapons' ability to generate $116.7 million internationally demonstrated that its themes and execution transcended cultural boundaries and that sophisticated horror could find audiences worldwide. The total worldwide gross of $268.3 million placed Weapons among the most successful horror films of the decade and represented a multiple of more than 7 times its production budget. This kind of return makes film studios very happy and virtually guarantees that the filmmakers involved will have opportunities for future projects. For Kreger specifically, This success cemented his status as a major creative force in contemporary horror and ensured that his next projects would receive serious consideration from major studios. The financial success had direct implications for the talent involved. Cregger's deal included 50 back-end points after deferring $2 million of his upfront payment, meaning he would participate substantially in the film's profits, with the film generating at least $65 million in theatrical profit before accounting for home media and streaming revenue. Cregger's back-end participation likely represented a substantial payday beyond his initial $10 million fee. Warner Bros.' decision to move the release date forward to August rather than keeping the original January 2026 date proved prescient. Summer releases typically have higher commercial potential than winter releases due to school vacation schedules, better weather that encourages moviegoing, and the general atmosphere of summer blockbuster season. Had Weapons been released in January as originally planned, it almost certainly would not have achieved the same level of commercial success. The film's performance also benefited Warner Bros.' overall market position in 2025. The studio's streak of #1 openings demonstrated momentum that helped with future deals, marketing partnerships, and relationships with exhibitors. Success breeds success in the film industry, and Warner Bros.' hot streak made it easier to attract talent and projects for future development. Critical response: Weapons received overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics, establishing it as one of the most acclaimed films of 2025 and solidifying Zach Cregger's reputation as a significant voice in contemporary cinema. The critical consensus praised the film's ambitious narrative structure, sophisticated approach to genre elements, and strong performances across its ensemble cast. On Rotten Tomatoes, the premier aggregator of critical reviews, Weapons achieved a 93% positive rating based on reviews from 377 critics. This score placed it among the best-reviewed films of the year and demonstrated near-unanimous critical approval. The website's consensus statement captured the general critical response. Zach Cregger spins an expertly crafted yarn of terrifying mystery and thrilling intrigue in Weapons, a sophomore triumph that solidifies his status as a master of horror. The Rotten Tomatoes consensus highlighted several key elements that critics appreciated: the effective mystery elements that kept audiences engaged, the genuine scares and tension that satisfied genre expectations, and the perception that Cregger had successfully followed up his breakthrough film Barbarian with something even more ambitious and accomplished. The sophomore triumph language specifically addressed concerns about whether Cregger could avoid the sophomore slump that often affects directors after an initial success. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average approach rather than a simple positive, negative count, assigned Weapons a score of 81 out of 100 based on 48 critic reviews. This score indicated universal acclaim according to Metacritic's rating system and placed the film in the top tier of critically reviewed releases. The Metacritic score suggested that even critics who might have had some reservations still rated the film highly overall, contributing to the strong aggregate score. Audience reception metrics also indicated strong satisfaction with the film. Post-track surveys gave the film an average rating of 4 out of 5 stars, with 65% of respondents indicating they would definitely recommend it to others. These numbers demonstrated that the film succeeded with general audiences as well as critics, an important indicator of commercial staying power since positive word of mouth drives sustained box office performance beyond opening weekend curiosity. Cinema Score, which surveys audiences on opening night and provides grades on an A+ to F scale, gave Weapons an A- grade. This score indicated strong audience satisfaction, though not the highest possible grade. The A- suggested that while most viewers enjoyed the film, some found elements that didn't completely satisfy them, possibly related to the dark tone, ambiguous elements, or the intensity of certain sequences. For a horror film, however, an A- represents a strong showing, As the genre typically receives lower cinema score grades than comedies or family films due to audiences' varying tolerances for frightening or disturbing content, individual critical reviews provided detailed analysis of the film's strengths and occasional weaknesses. The San Francisco Chronicle praised Kreger as a true horror auteur, using language typically reserved for established masters of the genre. This designation suggested that critics saw Kreger as not just competent but genuinely visionary, bringing a distinctive personal style and thematic concerns to his work rather than simply executing genre formulas. Empire magazine awarded Weapons a perfect 5 out of 5 stars and marveled that Kreger had managed to transform parental grief over missing children into crowd-pleasing entertainment. This observation highlighted one of the film's most impressive achievements, taking subject matter that could easily be exploitative or depressing and crafting something that provided both emotional depth and genuine entertainment value. The review suggested that Kreger had navigated a difficult tonal balance with skill and sensitivity. Brian Tallarico of RogerEbert.com gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4 and deemed it superior to Barbarian, Kreger's previous film. Tallarico praised the film's refusal to connect every narrative dot in the manner of recent elevated horror films, suggesting that the ambiguity and mystery served the story rather than frustrating it. He also noted that the film could be read as a school shooting allegory, though he acknowledged this interpretation wasn't definitive, highlighting how the film's themes allowed for multiple readings without requiring any single explanation. Variety's review praised the film enthusiastically, comparing it favorably to the dark fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. The review noted that regardless of how individual viewers felt about the ending, Kreger had achieved something remarkable by creating a story where characters kill on command and audiences have difficulty sleeping afterward. This description captured both the film's disturbing content and its effectiveness in creating lasting impact on viewers. Screen Daily's Tim Grierson praised the finale as superbly orchestrated and commended Kreger for answering the riddles he has teased throughout the runtime. This positive assessment contradicted some other critics who felt the ending was too conventional or didn't match the film's ambitious setup. Grierson's perspective suggested that when the narrative pieces clicked together, they created a satisfying whole that rewarded close attention to the film's various storylines and details. The Verge's Charles Pulley and more highlighted the film's meditation on how communities often conjure up convenient boogeymen to blame, rather than confronting the things that actually